My husband Gustav is going to get our house when his father passes away. He's also set to inherit $10 million and take over as the director of the family business. When we found out there was a lawyer present for the inheritance meeting, Linnea, Gustav's sister-in-law, couldn't contain her happiness. She strolled into the living room with an air of ownership, as if the house already belonged to her. Linnea, who was always impatient, constantly asking about the inheritance and when it would be settled, must have been eagerly awaiting this moment. Instead of paying attention to me, she went straight to the lawyer. In the past, I might have scolded her for ignoring me, but this time, I was too intrigued to see what she would say next. To my surprise, Linnea's remarks were even more greedy than I anticipated. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, clutching my stomach. The lawyer, clearly taken aback, looked bewildered as I continued to laugh at Linnea's audacity. Of course, Linnea didn't find it funny and shot me a cold look. Do you really think you're entitled to your father-in-law's inheritance? I chuckled at Linnea's obsession with money and her arrogant attitude. Pointing to Gustav, who had just arrived, she insisted, "The right to inherit belongs to my husband, Gustav." I took a deep breath, prepared to enlighten her with the truth. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ingrid, 60 years old. I've been a full-time homemaker, supporting my husband, Oscar, who is a doctor. Even after becoming a director, he never retired and continued working tirelessly. Gustav grew up seeing his father's dedication and chose to follow in his footsteps. I believe Oscar lived a happy and fulfilling life, passionate about his work until he passed away at the age of 63, possibly due to overwork. At his funeral, it was clear how much Oscar was loved and respected. Colleagues, subordinates, and even former patients came to pay their respects. Despite not knowing the details of his work, I felt reassured knowing he had lived a life without regrets. Amidst the solemn atmosphere of the funeral, Linnea, Gustav's sister-in-law, seemed out of place, almost relieved by her father-in-law's passing. Overhearing her conversation with relatives, it became evident that she was more concerned about her inheritance than mourning Oscar's death. Despite being in the midst of a funeral, Linnea's restlessness and apparent excitement about the inheritance were unsettling. It seemed she was unaware that daughters-in-law might not have inheritance rights. Gustav, noticing her behavior, apologized to me with a guilty expression. "Mom, I'm really sorry." Gustav's voice was filled with frustration. "No matter how many times I tell her, Linnea just won't listen." "It's not your fault, Gustav," I reassured him. "But if you feel that way, could you firmly warn her? There are a lot of people attending this event." I had noticed Linnea's behavior long before Gustav mentioned it. I remembered her unacceptable attitude vividly. When I was busy with my husband's funeral arrangements, Linnea came to the house, but she didn't lend a hand. Worse still, she didn't offer any words of comfort or sympathy. Instead, she kept bringing up money matters, asking about my husband's inheritance. "Your husband had quite an inheritance, right? How much was it? Even if you're his wife, it's his inheritance, so don't waste it, okay?" Her words cut deep, leaving me feeling angry and disheartened. Linnea always seemed to look down on me, making sarcastic remarks. I couldn't understand why she harbored such dislike towards me. Her comments about other people's wealth only added to my distress. My son, Gustav, followed in his father's footsteps and became a doctor. While Gustav's income was decent, Linnea was always fixated on money. She'd often call me, expressing concerns about our financial future and hinting at wanting financial assistance. This strained our relationship. I used to overlook Linnea's behavior, but her fixation on my husband's inheritance was the last straw. Gustav's income was unpredictable, and we couldn't afford luxuries. Linnea's suggestion that I should work to ease our financial burden was both hurtful and unrealistic. Despite my efforts to advise her, Linnea's attitude towards me only grew worse. Our conversations became increasingly heated, and she didn't hesitate to belittle Gustav, her own husband, just to put me down. In Linnea's eyes, I was her mother-in-law, but we were also family. I couldn't bear to see her treat family members with such disrespect. I tried to remind her that my comfortable life was thanks to my husband's hard work and that she should support her husband in the same way. But Linnea brushed off my words, focusing only on her desires. She seemed oblivious to anyone else's feelings. Her self-centered behavior extended to the inheritance proceedings, where she continued to act poorly, despite the solemn occasion. Even after the funeral, she couldn't stop asking about the inheritance, as if it were a casual topic of conversation. I tried to explain to her that these things take time, but she either didn't understand or didn't care. Linnea's relentless pressure only added to my stress during an already difficult time. Every time Linnea sees me, it's as if she forgets everything I've told her. I've reminded her countless times that she has no claim to the inheritance, but it seems like the message just doesn't sink in. Whether she genuinely believes that Gustav's money will become hers, or if she's plotting some other scheme, she's convinced she's going to inherit a fortune. After having discussions with Gustav, or rather, manipulating conversations to her advantage, she likely intends to secure a portion of the inheritance. If it were solely a family matter involving Gustav, I might not have intervened. However, Linnea crossed a line when she attempted to take valuable items from our home. Linnea, what are you doing? That's my necklace. I protested, but she brushed off my concerns. Oh, come on. Don't be so stingy. We're family, so it's okay, right? Her nonchalant attitude left me speechless. I can't be friends with someone who would steal from me, I retorted. But Linnea remained unfazed. Fine then. I'll take it as an advance on the inheritance. That's okay, right? I'm being patient here. No matter how many times I warned her against acting recklessly, she refused to listen. The moment she took my cherished necklace, a gift from my late husband, I reached my breaking point. From then on, I refused to open the door for her. Despite Gustav's frequent apologies on Linnea's behalf, he couldn't control her actions. I lost hope in expecting anything from either of them. The loss of my necklace wasn't the only pain I endured. Linnea's malicious behavior extended to spreading rumors about me to others, portraying me as the villain. What hurt the most was discovering a letter in our mailbox addressed to Gustav and his wife. It turned out to be Linnea's credit card bill, filled with extravagant expenses from luxury restaurants and online shopping. I was appalled by her reckless spending. When I confronted Gustav about it, hoping for some explanation, his response shocked me. I have no idea. She always talks about her income to me. Is everything okay? He asked, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Feeling betrayed, I couldn't fathom why he would think I'd assist them when he couldn't even retrieve the stolen necklace from his own wife. His request for financial help felt like a slap in the face. I've already done my part in supporting you as a parent. Why would an adult like you burden their parent and ask for help? I exclaimed, frustrated by his obliviousness. Linnea's bold actions, coupled with Gustav's inability to confront her, made me realize the truth behind the saying, "A thief acts boldly after committing theft." Gustav, you and Linnea are like two peas in a pod. I'm cutting ties. Stay away from me, I declared over the phone, my anger palpable. But from Gustav's casual response, it was clear he didn't take me seriously. Furious, I hung up and tossed the bill Linnea had left into the trash. The idea that she might have deliberately put it in our mailbox, assuming I'd foot the bill, was unbelievable. It made me question her integrity as a person. As I stared at my late husband's photo, frustration clouded my thoughts. Is there really a way to get the inheritance, Oscar? What should I do? I found myself asking, seeking guidance from the one person who wasn't there to answer. Lost in a whirlwind of emotions, anger, disappointment, and insecurity, I struggled to find clarity. Was it right to proceed with the inheritance amidst all this turmoil? In my confusion, I inadvertently sabotaged the proceedings. Despite my frustration with Gustav and Linnea's behavior, I pressed on alone with the inheritance proceedings. But perhaps my emotions reached my late husband as I discovered he had left a will. Reading his words, I felt a surge of determination to protect myself and right the wrongs. I'm glad Oscar was on my side after all. Thank you, I whispered, holding back tears as I clutched the will to my chest. With newfound resolve, I vowed not to let Gustav and Linnea dictate my fate any longer. Deciding to bide my time for the perfect moment to strike back, I momentarily forgot about Linnea's bill. But her reminder brought me back to reality. Her audacity to demand payment despite the unresolved inheritance infuriated me. Why do you think you're entitled to the inheritance? Stop joking.
I retorted, incredulous at her presumption.
But Linnea brushed off my objections with a smirk, insisting Gustav deserved the inheritance as the eldest son. Despite her arrogance, I kept a crucial detail to myself. It was their problem if they failed to realize it on their own. I waited patiently, watching for the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth. Finally, that moment arrived. With the lawyer's assistance, I executed my plan, ensuring justice prevailed in the end. I decided to reach out to Gustav once the legal procedures were complete. It was a routine step, but as expected, Linnea showed up at my doorstep with a triumphant smile. I purposely left the door unlocked, and as she barged in, I struggled to contain my amusement. I've been waiting for this moment for so long. Linnea, what brings you here? Is this gentleman the lawyer? I teased, gesturing to the lawyer seated before me. But Linnea ignored me completely, heading straight for the lawyer without a word. Normally, I would have scolded her for such rude behavior, but this time, I held back and watched. As she turned her back on me and approached the lawyer, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. What would she say next? Finally, we'll inherit this house, $10 million, and the director's position because Gustav is the eldest son, Linnea declared confidently. Her greediness surpassed even my expectations, and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The incredulous look on the lawyer's face only added to the hilarity. Of course, Linnea didn't find the situation amusing. What's so funny? Are you upset that we're taking the inheritance? She snapped. No, why would I be upset? But $3 million? Where did you come up with that amount? I chuckled, genuinely amused by her obsession with money. But it seemed Linnea wasn't amused by the idea of me inheriting either. How many times do I have to tell you? Since you don't have much longer to live, don't do anything reckless, she retorted sharply, wearing the necklace she had stolen from me. I refused to let her take anything else from me. With determination, I decided not to lose to someone so self-centered, greedy, and obsessed with money. I clenched my fist, ready to stand my ground. As Linnea pointed to Gustav, claiming the inheritance belonged to him, I took a deep breath, ready to reveal the truth. There shouldn't be any inheritance for you two to claim, Gustav. Isn't that right? I stated firmly. Confusion clouded Gustav's face. What do you mean, Mom? Oh, don't you remember? I challenged him. But Linnea's reaction was even more surprising. What are you talking about? Wasn't that resolved a long time ago? She interjected. I couldn't believe her audacity. Wait a minute, what do you mean resolved? I questioned, taken aback by her apparent ignorance. It seemed they had forgotten or conveniently ignored the truth. So, I decided to lay it all out for them. Gustav had been married to another woman before Linnea, with whom he had a child. Despite this, he had an affair with Linnea and eventually married her, hiding the truth until it came to light. When Gustav came to me, begging for help because he couldn't afford the alimony and child support payments on his own. I was stunned. Gustav, what were you thinking? I never imagined you would stoop this low. I scolded him. But he insisted he had no other choice if he wanted to marry Linnea. What are you saying? You're the one who committed the wrongdoing. Even if you're my son, don't expect me to pay for your mistakes, I retorted, exasperated by his excuses. I urged him to take responsibility and sort out the mess he had created. Why can't you help me even a bit? As a doctor, you're constantly working and must have some money to spare, right? Gustav audaciously remarked, provoking my husband's anger to its peak. In a moment of frustration, my husband decided to prioritize his grandchild's well-being over his feelings as a parent. Fine, I'll pay on your behalf. There's no need for my grandchild to suffer because of a terrible father like you, my husband declared sternly, leaving Gustav stunned by his decision. And to make his point clear, he vowed not to support Gustav in any way from that moment on and denied him any inheritance. Gustav probably thought my husband's words were just a passing outburst, but my husband was resolute in his decision. He believed that someone who abandoned their family didn't deserve to be celebrated or supported, so he didn't attend Gustav's wedding nor offered any assistance. Let it go. In the future, you'll rely on us for care, right? We're family, so try to compromise a bit, Gustav pleaded, but my husband remained firm. Knowing that Gustav had previously mentioned the need for future care and support, my husband made sure it was explicitly stated in his will that everything should go to me and our grandchild, with nothing for Gustav and his wife. During the funeral proceedings, the lawyer revealed the contents of the will, shocking Gustav and his wife. I couldn't resist adding insult to injury when I addressed Linnea, who had previously taken items from our house claiming it was an advance on the inheritance. Oh, by the way, Linnea, since you understood the contents of the will, you have no rights. So, of course, give it back, I demanded, pointing to the necklace she wore that day. Her reaction was one of discontent, and she threw the necklace back at me, unable to say anything reckless with the lawyer present. Confused and disappointed, she couldn't comprehend why she wasn't entitled to her father-in-law's inheritance after all. When Linnea tried to justify her actions by saying that being plundered made her more attractive and that marrying Gustav, who already had a family, was inevitable, I couldn't believe her audacity. I remembered feeling furious at her attitude at the time. I used to think Gustav was deceived by such a terrible woman, but now I realize they are a perfectly matched couple. Linnea was desperate for the inheritance, whether it was the hospital or the house. In the end, she clung to the lawyer, asking, "Then what can I get?" But the lawyer, who my husband had contracted, remained calm and repeatedly explained the contents of the will, stating that they had no inheritance rights. This is unbelievable. I don't believe it. It must be a mistake. Linnea protested. But no matter how much she fussed, nothing would change. The lawyer's calm demeanor seemed to aggravate her even more. She stormed out of the house, red-faced and frustrated. Watching her leave with Gustav, I quietly pumped my fist in triumph. After that, she never contacted me or visited the house again, and the inheritance procedures were completed smoothly. I was worried they might confront Gustav's ex-wife, who had a grandchild, but Gustav, who didn't even pay child support, didn't know her contact details, so there seemed to be no issues. And Gustav and Linnea, who didn't get any inheritance, seemed to be having a big quarrel. She told Gustav, "I married you thinking I would get a big inheritance from your father, and they're apparently on the brink of divorce," I heard through the grapevine. There's a saying, "End of money, end of love," which fits them perfectly. I only received one contact from Gustav, saying, "Give me the money or house you inherited," but I naturally ignored it. "Don't talk nonsense while you're awake," I exclaimed and hung up the phone. I sighed, wondering where I went wrong in raising my son. But there was also good news. A letter arrived from Gustav's ex-wife, stating that the inheritance procedures were completed. Along with an update, there was a photo of my cute grandchild and words of gratitude. "Thank you for being such wonderful grandparents," the letter said. "They're living very happily now." The grandchild my husband had been concerned about until the end is growing up healthy and living happily with her new father. There was also a lovely family photo in the letter. Although I felt guilt as a parent, my mood brightened and my heart warmed. I was very happy and immediately read the letter in front of my husband's altar to report to him. Despite being continuously disappointed by Gustav's actions and words, reporting about the grandchild always brought a smile to my face, and I felt happy